All right, everyone, it's time to talk about Lee Zeldin's good job, link in the description, archived, of course, with regarding the unbridling of U.S. industry. Now, this involves energy, it involves manufacturing, it involves mining, it involves refining oil, it involves all sorts of things. This is a big fucking deal, as Joe Biden would say. Lee Zeldin through his role as the head of the EPA, which is one of the funniest things that I've ever seen, actually, has decided to uncouple the Clean Air Act to some of these industries in their functions, removing a shit ton of regulations, by the way, in the process. This is what Trump campaigned on. This is what I voted for him for. This is why I was ecstatic when he announced that Lee Zeldin would be the head of the EPA. I think that's one of the best choices that he's made. You've basically got a dream team lined up now, other than Patel and Bongino and a few others. Bondi, I suppose, gets a pass. It seems like she was an unwilling participant with regards to the corruption of the FBI. So we'll keep our judgment aside on that one for now. Well, with Lee Zeldin, he has been going through everything that he possibly can to deregulate, especially the energy industry, by talking about, because the Clean Air Act is now tied into emission standards and shit like that. That has nothing to do with clean air. Carbon dioxide is not going to pollute the air. That's just the long and short of it. Now, if you're talking about sulfur dioxide or something like that, or what happened in East Palestine under the Biden administration, yeah, your air quality might go down a little bit. Or any time that Canada, with its poorly managed forests, ends up with a massive forest fire. The other day it was so hazy here, you could barely even see the mountains, actually. Thank you, Canada. Real cool. No offense to my Canadian clankers out there, but the Canadian government, I think 99% of you agree, doesn't know what it's doing, actually. Most of the time, the US government doesn't either, by the way, so, right now we've got reasonably intelligent people in power. That's an improvement. Before, the President of the United States could not walk up a flight of stairs. So, you'll excuse us if we had 4 years of shit. Uh, but the Donald Trump administration, and especially in the EPA role with Lee Zeldin, doing a very good job. The deregulation will spur energy production when energy companies realize, hey, we don't have to go through 10,000 pages of red tape. Now it's 10 pages of red tape in order to set up a refining rig or something like that. I have a feeling that U.S. fuel is going to be very much in demand in many parts of the world. This is roughly a doppelganger, by the way, to other people in the administration. You've got Gabbard, DNI, of course, gunning after the Epstein files and things like that. And she's a firebrand, so I have a feeling she'll do a good job. Stefanik, she stomps on everything in her path, basically. And then you've got, of course, RFK Jr. With medical deregulation, with trying to expedite patents and things like that, which is a great thing. We're bringing back pharmaceutical companies to the United States from foreign shores. I have mixed feelings on pharmaceutical companies, and I think RFK Jr. probably agrees with me on this one. But at the very least, you're creating jobs and shit, and you can, oversee them more directly. So, you didn't put Ozempic lab is not in Wuhan, I suppose, anymore. I think that that's an improvement. It's a mild improvement, but it's there. And then you've got Maha, healthy living and so forth, basically telling people, hey, your diet fucking sucks. We need to get the corn syrup out of our food. I have a sneaking suspicion, by the way, that the reason why Donald Trump leaned on Coca-Cola was at the advice of RFK Jr. to replace the sugaring agent, high fructose corn syrup, ugh, with cane sugar, actually grown in the USA, manufactured in the USA. That's actually a more major victory than most people believe, because corn syrup is killing millions of people every single year around the world. Just saying. But anyway, with regards to U.S. industry and environmental deregulation, For a very long time, the environmental courts have been a real thorn in the side with regards to farming, with regards to energy production, with regards to land usage, basically everything. You're not allowed to put a factory here. Why? Because near extinct species has one nest on this property. Oh, well, that's wonderful. It's just like here in the state of Vermont. If you find those wild orchids on your property, ladies' slippers, you shouldn't tell anyone because then the EPA might come in and say, well, or the state might come in, more likely the state, and say, well, you're not allowed to build your shed because ladies' slippers are on your property and they're endangered and shit, so you're not allowed to build anything here. This has actually happened before. Let's look at what they did to Slate Ridge. Slate Ridge, which is not far from here, just over to the west, was a training camp for militia, effectively. And they couldn't get them for gun charges or anything else. So what did they do? They turned to the environmental courts. And they went in and said, we're going to check out the property. Ah, shit. Well, this is a building and it's got a foundation, but it's not registered. It hasn't been properly licensed. Well, you're not allowed to have the property anymore. Bye. That's basically what they did. To get rid of the militia training camp, they had to go to the environmental courts. They're out of control. It makes absolutely no sense. That one hit hard because that's local news, actually. It's right here in this county. And I would say ultimately, Lee Zeldin is doing a good job. And the unbridling of U.S. industry is definitely needed. We need to revamp the entire economic situation. We're going to have to produce and manufacture more things in our country if we're going to wean ourselves off of globalist reliance. Now, this doesn't mean you don't have global trade. It's just, why can't we export a bunch of shit? And then when you import shit, you can achieve trade balance. It's perfectly fine. Of course, there's always going to be a demand for foreign goods. I don't think that many people in the U.S. grow lemongrass, for example. You may have noticed I'm a bit obsessed with it. It's one of the best things you can put in your food if you make a stir fry and shit. Or tom yum or something like that. If you've never had tom yum soup, I suggest that you try it, by the way. Anyway, as far as the import and exports go, I have a feeling that this is going to help balance it much more. We'll still probably be a net importer, but the trade imbalance will be far less. And if you can eliminate certain other countries based on what they tend to export to you, for instance, fuel, well, there's the Middle East. We can uncouple ourselves from the Middle East by simply having our own oil and gas. We can uncouple ourselves from manufacturing goods by simply having our own factories. Well, there's China, and so on forth. Farming, that would be a big one. I would like to see Lee Zeldin and RFK Jr. team up on this particular effort, to lean also on the Department of Agriculture to try to force the deregulation of people growing their own home gardens and things like that. Because some people, they live under a housing authority. They're not even allowed to grow in their yard. They can only have grass. Well, what the fuck sense does that make? Which one looks better? Well manicured grass, 50s style. Or a bunch of fucking flowers with birds and bees and shit like that and butterflies flying around. I think that the latter looks much better if somebody wants to turn their entire city lot into a wildlife refuge. I don't understand why anyone would have a problem with that. Also, it saves on maintenance. You don't have to mow it as much. That's the sort of thing that I'm into. I would love a world where every city lot was forced to become a garden, actually. That's about all. Peace out.